All right. So I'm here with Jim Clark, who's an absolute beast of a guitar player. Jim and I have known each other for the best part of 20 years,
yeah.
which is quite frightening.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd have a chat, really, just because you got a new ebook out and you got this new coaching business. So I'm really sort of keen to talk to you about some of the concepts that are in the book, because there's quite a few of those things in there which resonated with me as a teacher. And obviously we've been in education for a long time as well. So I just wanted to start with sort of how you started out. I mean, you're one of the best educators in the UK, right? So how did you start out in education?
Actually, my first teaching gig was with you, actually, when I came to be in Brighton. And prior to that, I think it was just we had a friend in common that needed. I'll leave people's names out. Do you know what I mean? But we had a friend in common, and he needed a dep. And at the time, I'd just done that guitarist of the year thing. I think Guthrie won and Dave Kilminster and all that. Yeah. So I was kind of fresh off the back of that, and I was kind of trying to use just the momentum I'd got up to try and sort of push my way into things, as many things as possible. So I was kind of frantically kind of going around to sort of networking and picking up deck gigs and things like that. And this particular person wrote for a guitar magazine at the time. Was teaching at BIM. He was kind of doing all the stuff I wanted to do. We were quite matey and that, and he got me into debt for him on some gigs because he needed someone last minute. And I did a decent job, and then realised we had a lot of people in common that we knew, things like that. I was having lessons off Sean Baxter at the time, who is just ridiculous. I mean, Sean's taught everyone who's anyone, I think, in the UK and abroad probably. But yeah, absolutely monster. And especially, when you and I would have been younger, you know what I mean? He was a massive influence via sort of, guitar articles and things like that. And obviously,
thing.
Yeah, the whole sort of jazz metal thing. I mean, again, if you're kind of a younger or a guitar player, probably under 30 or something, you probably think that, sort of guys like Guthrie invented the idea of, playing tapping licks over sort of, altered chords and stuff like that. But Sean was doing that stuff, back in about 1993. He was doing it before I even started playing guitar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So him and Greg Howe kind of sort of spearheaded that. But I was having lessons with him. And again, he was really prominent in kind of getting me, opening doors for me, essentially. He would put me forward for gigs and stuff like that. And I think just having his kind of thumbs up to certain people meant that they went, oh, okay, maybe he's worth, And then anyway, they got me in at BIM. And that was really my first teaching thing, really. And I won't lie, I was bricking it the first day. As soon as I'd never done that before. So as soon as, like 30 people file in and then stand
a room full of guitar players judging you.
Impress me. So yeah, it was, that was it really. But I think, it was just a learning curve. And I think the thing for me is I've always been quite good at kind of figuring out my own way of thinking about things. I'm not very book smart, so I don't take information in purely by reading it. So I'm quite a sort of a doer, like a practical learner. So for a lot of things, I had to kind of take it apart. And I think the big light bulb moment for me was when I was at college. I studied at the Guitar Institute when I was just fresh out of school. And to be honest, it was like being thrown into the deep end of a pool. When you can't swim, it was really tough. That was back when sort of music education wasn't kind of regulated. It didn't kind of fall into these kind of guidelines, and sort of university style structures. It was literally written by musicians for musicians, and you basically, you swam or you sank, and that was it. And I absolutely bombed on theory, and I just couldn't get a handle on it at all, and I felt completely lost. Absolutely bombed on the exam in the first term, and when I look back at it, I just kind of realized that it was because I couldn't actually apply any of it. It made no sense. It was just like maths, or it was just, it made no sense to me. It didn't connect to what I was doing here. And it put me down this little route of trying to put anything that I found out onto here. So what I would initially do was I would almost kind of visualize playing it. I'd visualize it here, how it worked here, and then I would work everything out off of here. And I mean, to this day, I'm probably a bit better at it now, obviously through years, but for a very long time, if you asked me, what notes are in a chord or a triad or something like that, it would be quicker for me to literally think of it here than to actually just recall it as like data, like remembering a history day or something like that. So everything really became about how it worked here. And I think bit by bit, that got me into, I suppose, just into a habitual way of thinking about things. And then that sort of became a sort of a way of like systemizing. So the thing I always talk about with people I teach is about having systems for everything. So there isn't anything really that you want to be doing that is just kind of vague. Do you know what I mean? It's not about knowing everything about everything, but you should at least have a system or an approach that means that you can get in the door.
Yeah.
And then be able to then demonstrate that, and one of the things, that I found in education, sort of fast forwarding through, like we spent some time working together, and then I moved to guitarists in London, and then you came and joined the team there as well. So, and that's been it really. That journey's just kind of teaching in that kind of university level really has been my thing. And I didn't do any private teaching apart from the odd person, you know what I mean? I sort of didn't do that for years and years and years. And it's only recently I've kind of started doing things more one-to-one again.
Yeah. Would you say all these sort of systems and this kind of way of verbalizing what you see on the neck is from students directly asking, well, how do you do this thing? Is that where it's from?
I don't know. It could be the catalyst. Because I always think of it as like it's just problem solving. That's all it is. And I actually think creativity is problem solving. So when you deal with people that say they can't be creative and stuff like that, you can be creative, but you have to put it through the lens of a problem. Do you know what I mean? And then the approach that you use to solve that's where the creativity comes in. It's very hard to be creative if there's no stimulus. If it's just a kind of blank canvas, that's really tough. But if you can make it into a problem-solving kind of event, then suddenly, for me anyway, the creativity starts kind of moving. Yeah. And I'm actually like that as a player too. I'm like the worst guy in the world if I go into a guitar shop and play a guitar. So I can't play. Because I'm one of those people that I don't tend to sit and play songs or anything like that.
Yeah, your set thing that you play when you get into a guitar shop.
Not at all, no. And the thing is, and a friend of mine kind of put the figured it out. A guy who was doing some recording before, and he said to me that like I need to give you the scenario. I have to feed you the line. And then you're off. That's it. And I think it's similar to, I guess, like a stand-up comic or something like that. They need a scenario or a situation or something. Or do you remember that TV show, Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
So if I feel a bit like that, that's kind of what I need as a musician normally. That I just need a kind of stimulus or a scenario-based thing And then what that allows me to do then is be systematic towards how I solve that problem. So yeah, it probably is actually from students asking me things or it's just having to think about, all right, how do I reinterpret this to then spill it out to someone else in a doable way. And I think that the big thing for me has always been contextualizing everything. I mean, I can't tell you and you'll know this anyway, but I can't tell you the amount of times when you'll teach something in a class and you'll have students, I was going to say kids, they're not kids, they're adults, but people sitting there and they'll go, oh yeah, I know that. Or they'll tell you what you can and can't do. And you go, okay, great, show me. And they'll be like, what? And well, show me. You just told me. Show me. Do it. Actually do it. Show it. Show me how that works. Make me hear it.
Yeah.
And they can't do it because they've just found the answer to something. You know what I mean? And gone, oh, well, okay, well, I own that piece of information now. And the thing is, you don't own it unless you can actually do it. And the thing is, the people that they're listening to and the people they look up to, they also don't give a toss about the fact of knowing that information. They've done the spade work so that that information comes out in their playing, and you're naturally kind of attracted to it, So the big thing for me has always been to be able to kind of sort of tackle anything really on the guitar in a way that I can kind of then put it out to someone in a kind of, okay, do it in these steps rather than just go boom and vomit information out there. Yeah. I mean, I probably have been guilty of that in younger years, but I think actually weirdly being in the education funnel has kind of made me a better player as well, because it's made me sort of more organized. And, and again, people that we both know, that like everyone you work with or you play with and that, they kind of influence you, you learn things from them, so like our friend John, he's probably the best guitar player in the country, easily.
Yeah, John Wheatcroft, Freddie.
Yeah.
Doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yeah. And again, there'll be people going, oh no, the guy from whatever, no, they're not. John Wheatcroft is the best guitar player in the country, easily. He's one of the best players on the planet. He's insane, isn't he? Like, he's just...
Well, it's a level of musicianship, I think, is what we're talking about. And I think, it's not, because a lot of people look at technicality, and it's kind of what we're talking about is this, a lot of students nowadays seem to know a lot of concepts, but there's no real way of putting that together.
Exactly. Yeah, they just know raw information, or again, one of the things that's pretty prominent now with these kind of 50 fusion licks and all this. It's like, that's not how you get good.
There's an interesting thing in well, we'll talk about it in your new book. You can maybe just talk to us about your ebook. But there was one thing that resonated with me, because I always talk about this in my teaching. It's like sort of the idea that rather than learning 50 licks, you learn one lick that you can kind of repurpose 50 times.
Exactly.
It's much more useful.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, just to kind of back up what I'm saying with this. So that approach, and again, this is very prominent on the internet now and on social media. And again, if you're a guitar player that's kind of under 30 or 35, that's probably what you're really into. And the issue with that stuff is that is akin to going to a foreign country with a phrase book and hoping that you're going to be able to converse with fluency. And the thing is, all of that stuff only works in the safety of your bedroom, where nobody else is pulling the scenario around. It's in a controlled environment. That's why most of those guys that do that stuff, you never see them gig or tour. Half of them. My 7-year-old kid's done more gigs than those guys. Do you know what I mean? Because what they do is they create content that works safely at home, and it's very impressive, and it's not detracting from that. But there's a huge difference between the skill set that you need to actually work in the industry and the skill set that actually is kind of just, it's just practically works. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, you can only really put it to the test by going out and doing it. And the thing is, you know, much like, you know, this phrasebook analogy, you couldn't go into a coffee shop in France and then just, you know, completely order it off of there, because they're probably not going to greet you in the same way as this is setting out. That, you know, their setup's not going to be the same. Do you know what I mean? It's like in this country, I'm pretty sure, you know, no one says, "Good morning, sir. What would you like?" You know, they're probably going to go, "Oh, hi, mate. Sorry, give me 2 ticks. I'm just doing something." And that is not in your phrase book as a foreign, you know, a foreign visitor. So you're just going to be like, "Shit, you know, what am I going to do?" And music's the same. You can't have these hard and fast rules where it's set up. So you actually, so really going to that point that I make in the book, what I'm aiming at is the fact that what you need to be good at is the grammar of music, which goes back to the idea of, have one phrase, but do 50 things with it. And the thing is, actually, all of my favorite players do that, you know, and again, if you research players, again, rather than just kind of, you know, learn tab, things like, if you actually pull their playing apart, most players are quite modular in the way they put things together. They'll be quite, not, I don't want to say easy to decode, but when you know the grammar of music, or you think in terms of grammar, and you start pulling them apart, you can start seeing things that happen. And then you start actually realizing that it's like that transcription is completely wrong because that player doesn't do that. The notes are right, the fingering's wrong because this player actually only uses 3 fingerings for that. You know what I mean? Or they only play in that way. I saw an interesting thing a while ago that a guy had done. I think he's a bit of a content creator, guitar player. I think he does play. I don't know him very well, but he's a good player. But he did a video on the beat it thing, and he kind of showed this that, you know, the stretchy licking beat it, and he was talking about how it's played versus how he would play it, and the way that he thought the shortcut to play it is actually how Eddie plays it. And I commented on it, and I was like, well, that is actually how Van Halen does it. Yeah. And I said to him, because of X, Y, and Z, because that arrangement of 1 note, 3 notes, and then a lower hammered on note is how he does this lick, this lick, this lick, and this lick in these other tunes. And all he's doing is stretching it out. It's the same architecture. And again, it's just that thing, if once you understand that stuff, it completely changes the way that you view this. You know, I mean, another, you know, a very divisive player, but he's like one of my favorite guys is Ingve. And what I love about him is that, you know, he's the master of like, okay, here's a few ideas, but I can do it 500 different landings, 500 different ways of doing that. Yeah. You know, and the thing is, you're never going to hear that I'm essentially just sort of doing it the same way. He's like the master of endings. You ever want to get endings together? How to end phrases. That dude's endings are just incredible. Even if he took the speed away, just his endings and his phrasings are beautiful. They're so expressive, you know.
Yeah, it's like the outram always seems to be the issue for most people's improvising, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they can play a set in stone thing. And again, this is something I sort of deal with. I mean, I should contextualize that. I could talk about the coaching thing a little bit. What I tend to do now, after spending a lot of time in formal music education and kind of seeing the sort of demise of that, and how it's essentially, almost without exception, amongst the most common schools, it's pretty much a case of money. Anyone can come in. They don't need to be any good. Just pay the fee. You can come in. So what happens then is all the standards drop. Everyone has to pass. You know what I mean? So what I started doing was I started getting approached by a lot of younger players who were working. and would want to come back in and say, look, I didn't really get this down at college. I don't know how to do this. I don't feel I spent the time on this at college. So what I've started doing is essentially coaching young working players. And what I do is I work with them to kind of upskill them, hopefully with the end result of hopefully getting more work, but just making them more employable. But the thing that I really try and work on with them is, so I have a concept that I call like the vending machine guitarist. And the vending machine guitarist is basically what most colleges teach you to be, which is you have to be mediocre at everything, but you have to be able to do a bit of everything, and you have to just be able to do it. And the majority of working players are vending machine guitarists, in my opinion. They're okay at most things. They're a safe pair of hands. So what I mean is, I need a guitar player for this. Doesn't need to be an absolute monster. They don't need to be a specialist in this. They just need to be able to do the basic bottom line. Same way as if I want a plumber, I just want the tap changed. He doesn't need to be the best plumber in the world. He just needs to not be the worst. So, I get the first one out of the book. And a lot of guitar players are like that. A lot of working players are like that, especially the younger ones, because that's what they've been taught. They've been taught that, you have to be able to play a bit of funk. You have to be able to play, a little bit of rock. You need to be able to, not sight reading. I don't teach sight reading now, but you should be able to do some sight reading at least, and chart reading. And they have all these basic skills that they have.
Do you think that's because maybe teaching has grown out of what used to be the session industry, where you had to be like the most versatile player you could possibly be, so you had to play
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I think that is still promoted. I do think that's still promoted. But the thing is, I think it's born out of the fact that it's trying to cover the course is trying to cover too much ground at surface level. There's absolutely zero depth. So, you could do a styles module at one of these colleges, and it'll be 10 weeks, and it'll be week 1, blues, week 2, jazz, week 3, funk, week 5, rock. And then it'll be some nonsense, formative assessment, some crap stuck in the middle just to space it up so you don't have to make any content. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had a student once that said, I've done jazz. I've done jazz.
If only they knew. If only they knew.
That's really interesting. So, maybe it's just the sort of cherry picking specific things. I mean, so these sort of young professionals that you're working with is like, how are they?
So what I do? Okay, so what I do is I get them to fill out this very long form that basically does a little bit of brain surgery, and like a consultation form. And he just asks a load of questions, and he gets them thinking. And what he gets them thinking about is, actually, what is my ideal blue sky scenario here as a player? Because if you speak to your average person, they'll say to you, what do you want to do as a player? Like, where do you want to go with this? And they'll say, well, I want to, I don't know, I just want to make money from playing. I just want to do some gigs, want to do some tours, want to write for a magazine, want to do some YouTube stuff. I want to do this, I want to do that. I want to, and it's like, well, yeah, good luck with that. I mean, everyone wants to do all of that stuff, but really, like, what are you good at? That's the thing. Most people don't consider taking what they're good at and then pushing the fader up on it. Do you see what I mean? There's very little out there that actually encourages people to specialize in something and then become known for being good at a thing. Do you know what I mean? What most people are consumed with is, I saw a video of Tommy Emmanuel, so now I'm going to work on acoustic guitar. And it's like, well, that's fruitless because, you suck at that, but you're a really good slide player, or you're, amazing at playing, electric blues, or you're a great, rhythm player, or you write really good parts like Coldplay, you're a really good part writer. It's like, so lean into what you're good at. People are too worried about, I understand if there's fundamental weaknesses in your playing, like knowledge, gaps in knowledge and things like that, or little technical things, that needs filling. But really, you don't need to be able to do everything. It's very rare that we're ever going to, I don't get called to do everything, and I'm sure you don't,
Yeah.
Some things, come across my desk and I'll just go, that's not for me. Anything with acoustic guitar, it's just, I'm not the guy, just, unless, or like slide guitar, things, I suck at that. I'm mediocre at finger style. I could do it, but I'm not that good at it, and as a result, what I could do is I could just keep, working at what I'm good at and getting better at that, or I could, sorry, the garbage truck's just
dust.
I've left the window open, and obviously they've come right now.
Would you have scaffold
stuff I'm saying? Yeah, I'll let them go. But there's just a lack of promoting your strengths. So I think you should maintain this kind of vending machine stuff. You need to be able to do that. You want to be able to take a gig. Someone says to you, oh, are you free Saturday night? This gig, this gig, I can't make it. I've got charts, so I can send you MP3s, or I've got charts on iPad, whatever. And you go, it's just a duo thing, vocalist, acoustic. Yeah, cool. Yeah, send it. Cool. You want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, that's the bare minimum. That's the minimum requirement. Yeah. That's not a specialism. That's just something everyone should be able to do. Yeah. It's not a big deal. So I think really what I try and get these people to do is just kind of get better at the things they're into. And what's kind of interesting to me is that very often they would have let go of the reason that they started playing guitar. Do you know what I mean? Mm. They would have kind of drifted away from their initial influences and all this stuff, and then started focusing on, being the best neo soul guy or whatever. Mm. And actually, when you drill down into them, they'll be like, "Oh, I just want it to be Slash." You know what I mean? Yeah. And then they'll do that, and you'll go, "Well, you sound really good doing that. Why don't you do more of that?" Yeah. And get good at that. So it's kind of, and it's getting them to think about that, and then trying to view it in this way where they can almost kind of crystallize a sort of the player that they want to be. It doesn't have to be one-dimensional. It can be multifaceted, but you don't need to be the most harmonically deep player. Eric Clapton sounds all right. I'm pretty sure he only knows a pentatonic scale. It's just you don't need to Angus Young or someone. You don't need all this other stuff unless you're gonna use it. It's like there's this big fascination in recent times about all the sort of melodic minor stuff and the altered scale and all this sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, great. But, and the thing is, again, in my opinion, all of that stuff is not difficult if you come at it the right way. If you've come at it through listening to the music and understanding how it was put in place by the originators of that style, it's not that difficult to get your head around. It's difficult to get your head around when someone gives it to you as a theoretical concept and it's fully blown, and then you go on Instagram and you look at people playing it 3 note per string as like with legato. But basically they're playing like rock players but calling it fusion because of the note choice. And it's like, that's not fusion is not relentless streams of 16th note playing over altered chords. It's just not. That's not what that music is. That's what guitar players think it is. So it's like the fascination about that. It's become almost something that you have to keep up with the Joneses, and you just don't need, unless you're playing that style of music. You don't need it, and then all you might need it for is if you want to spice up some blues, and even then you could do it with 2 licks. there's literally a couple of stock phrases from the bebop world that everyone plays from back then, and you can trace it all the way up into Robin Ford and past Robin Ford. And if you knew then, and again, if you used the system in my ebook, you could very quickly just place that all over the neck, and you'd sound like you could play the altered scale. It'd be, and because it's not something that is a set sound. It's a transitional thing. It's just attention to get to the release chord. Do you know what I mean? So it's not even something that really needs that much work. So again, it's another shiny thing for guitar players to be kind of distracted by. And weirdly, most people could do with just being better at minor pentatonic.
Well, we've said for many years, that's all there is, right?
Yeah, it's all pentatonic shit. Is literally like that. I mean, how many times have you heard students say that? That was almost a catchphrase for me when I was teaching, and students to this day still say it to me on social media and stuff like that. Yeah. And the thing is, most people's playing you can trace back, to a core of that stuff, But again, nowadays you're kind of, you're labelled a boomer or whatever, whatever that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose we are.
Like that. I don't think we are. Well, I don't think I'm not in that.
Yeah, I don't think
you are. No, you're not.
No, I think
you're not. You're not in that age group. No. I'm not. But yeah, I mean that's the approach for this coaching thing. So we sort of we do a sort of minimum of sort of 3 months, and I meet up with them every week, and I kind of give them assignments and things like that. And to be honest, it's been going great. I mean, I've got in the last couple of months, I've got two of my students that have secured permanent West End shows. Someone else is off on tour at the moment with a really big artist from America. Last minute that they got a call and they've gone off and done that. So that everyone's working. 99% of the people I teach anyone, really, I teach anyone that wanted to, some help. It's not like an elitist thing. It's just, I've just seemed to have kind of got into a little niche there where those people come to me. Yeah. And everyone is working, and the thing that I found is that just through having the momentum of working towards something and getting better and actually sometimes tackling their issues and that, it's almost just like the momentum of them doing that starts to open up the doors. And the biggest thing that I've found is confidence with people. Mostly confidence. Yeah. And you can only facilitate confidence by really, really making it secure, making the playing secure. And it's not just technically secure, but it's the thought process secure, the approach secure. So that when they go into a situation, they don't just go like deer in headlights. They actually have.
We've all been
like, 100%, yeah, more often than not. But it's just more about having a procedure towards something. So, I need, can you put an 8-bar play out on this show? Looking at the chords, rather than just look at the chords and just have a meltdown, looking at the chords and going, okay, right. So I know a system of doing this. I can do it this way, this way, this way. There's the options, and then do it.
Because that seems to be the thing with probably most of the students I see is the fear of the unknown. Like you put them into a situation with a gun to the head, and then suddenly, like you say, it's like a rabbit in the headlights.
But the thing is, as well, what's kind of interesting with that is the actual scenario is never going to be as bad as you think it is. When I was at college, I always kind of had this feeling that, really what you needed to be able to do was, improvise over giant steps at 300 BPM in all 12 keys live on TV. And that was what the scenario, that's what you were aiming towards. And of course that never happens. You're going to be playing over, EAGD, you know, just simple, you know, simple chords. You know, it's not going to be anything, you know.
Right.
Most music is not that complicated, unfortunately, nowadays. It's not, well, not unfortunately, but it's not that difficult. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of it is quite diatonic.
Yeah.
If there is anything funny in there, it's very basic. Do you know what I mean? It's normally just a simple modulation of major to minor or something like that. You know, it's just what you hear in you know, contemporary music. I mean, even if you took a Joe Satriani tune and you just stripped it all away down to the chords, you'd find that it's just simple chords, most of it. Yeah. You know, it's just you know, they don't all sound like that. You know, if you strip it away and you're just, you know, it's just E major, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, that complicated. And it again, most music's like that. If you can strategically attack it, then it doesn't sort of floor you too hard, you know. And the other thing as well is that, you know, you got to kind of not feel the need to be impressive all the time. That's another thing as well, I think, especially with younger players. There's almost like a sense of proving themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like almost like, well, I need to play in a way that I need to prove that I belong here, that I'm allowed here amongst these other people. So they tend to kind of sometimes sort of nervously overplay or they overstretch. And actually, you know, a lot of the best sounding guitar stuff is not, I mean, simple, but it's not that complicated. Rhythmically, it's normally quite straightforward. Harmonically, it's very straightforward. I mean, I don't know if you saw that interview with Dan Huff, you know, on that Vertex.
Yeah.
I really like that guy's channel, actually, because he's got proper guitar players on there, people that have actually done something. You know, when one of my clients hit a session with me and he said, oh, I'm really obsessed with this Dan Huff interview at the moment. And I've been working on the solo that he demonstrates on here. And I was just wondering what he's doing. And I said to him, oh, it's just triads. No, yeah, but it doesn't sound like that. I was like, yeah, but it is. It's just decorated. It's just triads. It's just decorated. Yeah. And again, you know, when you start pulling it apart and you show the approach that he's clearly using, it's just like, it's like pulling the curtain back at the end of the Wizard of Oz. And a lot of the time, music is like that. A lot of the stuff we have to do as working players is like that. It's kind of, how do you dress something very simple up to make it look attractive and shiny, you know?
So I guess your book is essentially like really digging or going backwards almost in a way, back to the fundamentals.
Engineering,
Yeah, we talked about like the pentatonic. You've got this whole idea about kind of splitting it into octave patterns, and that's really interesting. This whole idea of kind of forward octaves and backwards facing octaves. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So my ebook is again, I've probably got ideas for 50 of these things, but this ebook is based on the core of how I teach navigating on the fretboard. So most people are familiar nowadays, especially with the caged system and with 3-note per string style modal kind of shapes. If you go to nearly any guitar college in the world, you'll get the cage system kind of spoon-fed to you. And I think that's a really good thing. And the cage system is really it gets a bit of a panning on YouTube, normally from people that actually don't fully understand what it's for. They know it at surface level. Most provincial guitar teachers will know it mainly at surface level and maybe kind of roughly what it's doing. If you watch guys like a lot of Nashville players use the cage system, but they don't call it the cage system. I remember Guthrie Trapp is...
Yeah, I was going to mention Guthrie.
I love Guthrie's playing. Yeah. He's my favourite Guthrie on guitar, controversially. But
he's very cage-based, and he always talks about that, doesn't he?
Yeah, and the thing is, for a long time, he would say, oh, it's not about the cage system. And the thing is, it's exactly what you're doing. But I think the reason he thought that for a long time is because probably when he's seen people demonstrate or talk about it, he's like, well, that's not what I'm thinking. It's not what I'm doing. But actually that kind of chord-based system is the nature of the guitar, really. And it goes right back to like bluegrass and stuff like that. And that's why he uses it. And it's cool actually that he's now embraced that kind of moniker for it, and he started using that. So it's kind of almost legitimized it a little bit. But for students, I always found there's a problem with that stuff. And the problem is the shapes are too big. And this is something that I found myself kind of hitting a bit of this is going back years, hitting a bit of a sticking point with the idea of using arpeggios for playing through changes, right? So when we go, I might play a little bit. So with arpeggios, like if you played, say, A minor 7, and you're going to play, that's what you'd learn at college, okay? Now, when someone goes, right, so over this chord, play that arpeggio, then over that chord, play the altered, and then over this one, play major 7 and all this stuff. If you're thinking in terms of these huge shapes, you can't melodically play, can't be creative, can't strip it down small enough to be melodic. And then the advice will normally be like, oh, make it simpler, just play a couple of notes and things like that. And the problem is that people are learning this type of information and scales mainly as motor skill memory. And the thing is with that, what we start to do is we motor skill boxes together. So when we played pentatonic, so if you said I remember doing this from seeing students do this at college where, if you had to do a fretboard skills test or whatever, you go, play me a third position or the C4, A minor pentatonic. And they'll go, okay, wait 1 minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, it's that box there. And then they'll start from this note, which has actually got nothing to do with the root of the sound that you're playing over. And I sort of found that to be like a sort of gaping hole. And
you get them to play in another key, and then you're in a whole world.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is the thing. It's the manipulation of the ideas is where it falls down. If you can hard learn, again, like the licks thing, if you can hard learn it in a controlled environment, it works. If you stress test it, it breaks. And so what I sort of noticed was if I got people to start playing from the root of things first, so it actually doesn't matter what shape you're in, you need to know where the root is. And this kind of went down a kind of systematic rabbit hole of realizing that a lot of players don't know where the notes are. So that's a problem. So again, this in that ebook, one of the disclaimers is you got to really get your notes down. I think I say that in there. You can still learn the system, but it's not going to be as good unless you know the notes. And then the second thing is to manipulate the information to any real degree. You want to know where the intervals are, because the intervals are like a real big thing. I mean, guitar really is about intervals. And again, you'll find anyone that comes to guitar as a secondary instrument from like piano or something like that, they're used to thinking very melodic or harmonically. They kind of want to think about the notes. So there's an F sharp in it. Whereas a lot of the time for guitar players, we don't go, well, it's F sharp. We just go, it's major 6. Do you know what I mean? We think of it in a numerical way, because then we can transpose.
Yeah.
So having notes down, having some awareness of intervals is essential. But what I started looking at was the idea of shorthanding shapes. And the first thing I did was with arpeggios. So I would get students kind of playing arpeggios from the root notes, but not completing the shapes. Do you know what I mean? And then that got me into sort of chopping the scales and things like that up. And then eventually, when it came to things like improvising, what I was realizing was people was kind of always using the lower end of the guitar as their reference point. That was a big problem. So I would end up chopping this bottom bit off and go, look, just use the top part here. And what they would have difficulty with is seeing what I would refer to as the backwards facing octave. Like that. So the counterpart of that would be the low bit, which is what I would call forwards facing octave, which is kind of going low to high, but the orientation of the fingers kind of looks like it's sloping towards the guitar body. If it goes backwards, then it's sloping away. And it was always this bit that people kind of couldn't really see. And this is mainly just because we're so used to starting here. So that the system really teaches you to be able to break any scale kind of into two parts and be able to put it into forwards and backwards facing. And then what you're able to do then is, if you can find that note elsewhere, then actually you've got the same physical shape.
Yeah.
It looks a bit different because of the tuning, but the actual physical shape is the same. It's still one note, and then you've got a 3-fret gap, a 2-fret gap, and then a single note. And it's the same there. 1, 3-fret, 2-fret, single note. Or if I did it here, 1, 3, 2, single. You see what I mean? And that kind of seems to sort of turn a lot of light bulbs on with students, that idea. And it made them approach, the neck a little bit differently. And the thing is, it sort of stops you being overwhelmed with all the option anxiety. Now, one of the things you'll notice there is that really, this part of that scale, if I was to put it in second position, is here. So I'd need a 7-string guitar to come down to there. So really, it should tell you that when you're playing position 2 stuff, don't fucking bother with this. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not that useful there.
I didn't remember B.B. King doing much stuff down there, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
He did all right.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And the thing is, you know, there is this kind of need now with players to feel like they're using the whole box and all this type of stuff. You just don't, because you'll find that when you want to play melodically through something, people they use this sort of term where they're talking about like playing through chord changes, but actually just playing melodically, so it sounds musically.
Yeah,
you're never going to just use the entire box like that anyway. Yeah. I think people get too kind of wound up with that. And I remember, like, when I learned, it was always very much about playing the lowest to the highest point of any given box. And the issue with that is that when that's in a vacuum on its own, you can't hear the harmony. See what I mean? Whereas if you play a scale and you hit the root to root, that clearly fits that. You see what I mean? Yeah. Like you can actually hear the harmony in there. And this seems to be a sort of missing point with guitar players. So what I ended up doing was kind of just diving into this concept a little bit. And what I realized was that you can kind of visualize the scale as though it's actually the same fingering, but just starting at different points, starting at different string groups. So rather than being bogged down by the idea of like there's 5 positions, there's not 5 fingerings, there's one fingering. And what it does is it starts in 5 different places. Yeah. So I, in the book, I call it like the conveyor belt thing. So really guitar scales don't go like that. They start like this, and then they go on a conveyor belt that moves them forwards, and then they start reappearing over the top. Yeah,
that was really interesting. This idea about wrapping around the fretboard.
Yeah, it's like they go like that. They kind of in this kind of they wrap around the fretboard like that. They twist around it like that. Yeah. And once you kind of get that in your head, then
could you maybe like show us that? Like if let's say go shape 1, what we traditionally says shape 1 to shape 2.
Yeah, kind of. So if I go, shape 1 to shape 2, normally you would think of it as these bigger shapes. So shape 1 here would be, so I'd use that. Now that's my forwards octave. So when I move to the next position, it ends up in the middle of the neck. Okay, which a lot of people do that as standard, right? This was the light bulb moment for me, this next bit. If I go to the B string and I start it and I run out of space, it was the realization that actually I can copy and paste the E string to here and then carry it on.
Yeah.
And so I still maintain this kind of 3 fret, 2 fret, 2 fret, 3 fret, 2 fret, copy and paste it, and just carry on.
Yeah.
And that was literally the light bulb moment of it going. It's like, so it kind of like, it's like the like an escalator or a conveyor belt or whatever.
Yeah.
Just it goes here and it falls off the edge of the world, but it reappears on the top. And that was the thing that made me go, okay. Not that, and this isn't to say that, everyone else is doing it wrong. This is just an observation. Yeah. But I do think it's an observation that, to my knowledge, I've never seen anyone talk about.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we all look for sort of patterns, and it's like you mentioned before, it's about context, isn't it? It's like you're trying to apply some knowledge to something else. So presumably, if you spend, let's say, 3 months, 3 weeks, whatever, studying this, then you can apply it to something else like Mixolydian or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. And that's really what that ebook is. It's not a big book either. I didn't want to do something that basically just looks like this big Bible of scales and things like that. It's pretty, I mean, you've seen it, it's pretty short. It pretty much gives you the concept in more detail than I'm doing it here, more methodically. I think there's quite a lot of food for thought in the text as well about other things. And then almost what it should do is give you the tools to then go, right, so now look at this reference sheet. You should be able to apply that to this. See what I mean? Now, if you can use that, if you can actually use this, you can start to play through changes instantly. So if you imagine, I mean, here's something that I normally will give like students or clients as kind of like a little kind of shot across the bow. So if you took a simple chord progression, like do sometimes like something like Purple Rain or something like that. So let's simplify. It's essentially B flat major to G minor, and then F to E flat, right? Yeah. Right. So if you look at the harmonic layout of that, it's in the key of B flat. So it's a 1 chord going to a 6, to a 5, to a 4. Okay. Now you could play over that in B flat major. And I've seen people do that, and it generally will suck because the major scale's got wrong notes in it, which, you and I know this, but, again, your average person will maybe go, oh yeah, well, I know the major scale. And then, they can, they'll start, going up there. And the thing is, you're not outlining the harmony in any way, shape or form. So
and occasionally you'll hit one of these clashing notes, right?
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's when the clashy notes come in, you go, and then you quickly sidestep out of to fix it. The thing is, right, there's kind of a way around this, and an easy way of essentially playing changes, right? So, and this is what I get students to do. So what I'll get them to do is, I'll get them to think of it like this. I'll go, okay, look, it's major, then it goes 6 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord. If they're modally switched on, they might be able to go like, okay, essentially, so this is the major chord, that's the Aeolian chord, that's the Mixolydian chord, and then that's the Lydian chord. So if you were like really into modes and stuff like that, and you've got a kind of, a decent well of harmony chops, go for it. That's a good way of doing it. But you can actually get through it by playing root to root through each chord. So I could take a parent scale. So if I use this this system. So I use, say, B flat. I want to go from there. Now, when I move to the G, I want to think in G Aeolian. Now, what I could do is I could go through B flat and go, oh, wait a minute, oh, there's G. But I don't want to do that. I want to instantly grab the closest G, assign my 1 octave cell, and then go to the F, assign the Mixolydian cell, and then assign the Lydian. There's Lydian.
Yeah.
Lydian note there.
Yeah.
And then we... You know, and then you could just play melodically with it.
You know.
You know, without this kind of noodly sort of nonsense that
Running
people come out with. Yeah. And again, that's where people get trapped. So when you're able to... There's the connection point. You know, I'm playing really simply, but it sounds kind of like it's melodic. Yeah. But the thing is, the number one thing is that you can hear the chord progression all the time. See what I mean? So
are you visualizing the chord as well? I mean, is it primarily like chord first, or are we saying, okay?
No, I'm just root notes. Yeah, it's I'm aware of the chord through my caged indoctrination, which is not a bad thing. That's a really good thing. I mean, I probably am subconsciously thinking of chords. Yeah. Then again, you know, going back to the cage thing, I'm not. So for me, the cage system is not about kind of going, you know, like that, using the basic shapes. To me, the cage system is just a filing cabinet. And really, the cage system, all it represents for me is root on the E string and the D. Root on the D string and the G and the B.
Yeah.
It's just the root note location anyway, because before you even put the chord together, you got to know where the root is. So it kind of all goes back to the root all the time for me. You know, that's kind of how I feel about it anyway.
And we're just talking diatonically. So
and that's diatonic.
So this can then translate if you suddenly come across it.
If you're playing Spain or something. So if it was something very complicated, so let's say like Spain by Chick Corea, so you'd have, so if I remember this, it's been a while. It's a G major 7, and then like an F altered, and then F sharp altered, so F's like 7 sharp 5, and then E minor 7, and then again like an A altered, some D major 7, G major 7. I can't remember if it's that or if it's altered on C sharp. And then back to the F sharp altered, B minor, and B7, B minor and B7, right? So, so chord number 1 would be Lydian. So again, just take. If I go, where should I go? I'll go here. I'll go here. This would be safe. So what I'm doing here is I'm going G to G, and I'm using the way I visualize Lydian. So Lydian would be, and again, I know the intervals, but the main driving force under pressure is the recollection of the fingering. See what I mean? So I'm just able, and again, that could happen anywhere. You know, it could happen here. So it's just more about then F sharp. Now again, I'm cheating there. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, so I'm going, so I'll talk through what I'm doing. So G Lydian, G to G. And then I'll I'll do Phrygian dominant on that. So F sharp, Phrygian dominant, F sharp to F sharp, and then over E minor 7, like E Dorian, and then A altered, so superlocrian, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
To A there, and then I want to go D major.
yeah, yeah.
You can kind of hear it, and then back to the G. We'll be able to do it backwards as well.
So there's some underlying theoretical knowledge, obviously, because we have some number of different options over major sevens. And,
yeah, exactly, yeah. And again, the thing is, you know, that sort of thing you would have that worked out anyway.
Yeah.
You know, those people that play that music don't go into it blindfolded.
Yeah.
That's
so
what,
given the
that's
chords, right, off you go.
Yeah, it's just people only play those tunes when they've really got them nailed. You know, unless you go on a gig with John Wheatcroft and suddenly he goes, oh, do you know what? We're just going to play this now. I know you don't know it, but he's done that.
When he turn the volume knob down.
Yeah, it's just I'll just lay out for this one. Just keep moving your hand, like doing something. Yeah, that's happened to me a few times. But the thing is with it, you know, there is underlying knowledge, and you do need to know kind of what you're doing. So all of this stuff I'm doing now is backed up with theory. It's theoretical knowledge. But the fundamental element of it is more that I know where the notes are, and I know the intervals. The thing is, a lot of it is muscle memory. Once it's there, once I know. See, I don't need to really think much about. See what I mean? I can just kind of go, because as long as I can find an F or an F sharp, I can just kind of get into shape.
I mean, how do you feel about this idea of deliberate, conscious decisions to do something? Like, how do you get to that point? You know, this obviously
like this.
Teach students, so you're not thinking about it, but you're actually just okay. So now we can do it. You know.
Yeah, you have to put the stabilizers on. That's what people don't realize. People think that practice is basically putting a backing track on and shredding to it. And I'm pretty sure that they think that, you know, if they went round to, you know, Pat Metheny's house or Joe Satriani, what they're going to see is just your smoke billowing away from their guitar while they're like, you know, over the most complicated stuff ever. And it's probably not at all like that. It's probably sticking around one thing and trying to make it work and make it sound musical.
Yeah.
And actually playing really simply, because the thing, what people don't realize with this when sometimes when they're practicing is, if you're not doing things like this, your ear has to hear the harmony of the song before you can improvise on it.
Yeah.
If you just play at it through knowledge, then it's going to work, but nothing organic's really going to happen. If you do this, so for example, you took a tune and you play through it using this method, not even just my finger method, but just the method of just playing root to root on every chord. By the time you've done that a few times, you're going to clearly hear the harmony and the shape of that tune in your ear, which then informs your natural creative ear playing even more. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So you kind of have to go through it. And this isn't something that's new, because jazz players do this and non-guitar players do it. Yeah. For some reason, guitar players are never taught to do this. But you know...
Yeah, it's a unique instrument, isn't it? It's like, I don't know, because it's so shape-based. Yeah, a saxophone player has to learn, I don't know how many different fingerings for different scales. It's like...
Exactly, yeah. And the thing is, what's and again, this is kind of true now, that there still isn't a standardized sort of pedagogy. I hate those buzzwords, but a clear sort of pedagogy or approach that everyone uses for this instrument, from technique to just the layout and structure and the way that it works. It's still not there yet. There's a lot of information, and there's elements of that kind of approach where people are getting on board. And you know, one of the downsides of that is that there's an awful lot of people that sound exactly the same as each other nowadays, because they all go through learning the same things, but they're not taught to be creative or to branch out of it. They're taught it in stone. And then when you hear them, I mean, you see that a lot with a lot of social media players. You could watch some of these collab things, and honestly, if you shut your eyes and you listen to it, it sounds like the same person playing all the way through.
Yeah.
The tone's the same, the phrasing's the same, the articulation's the same, the ideas they're playing, the rhythms are the same. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, and I think that's a part of the reason for that, is people starting to do things all in the same manner. But the thing is with it is that somehow with guitar, we shortcut some of the things that other instruments do. You know, why is it that your average sax player is a much better improviser than quite an accomplished technical guitar player?
Yeah, and better is normally as well, because you never hear a saxophone player, "Oh, sorry, what key are we in?"
No,
it's like a guitar
that's
player.
it. They just go, top.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah, that's the one, isn't it? It works though, doesn't it? If you do it quick enough, it will just, no one's going to notice.
Yeah.
But they miss out on that stuff. You know what I mean? They don't, they're not taught it, or they don't do it. But it, you know, it's a big deal. But I think doing things in that way, it allows you to actually hear what you're trying to do. It allows you to hear the song.
Yeah.
And then if you can hear what the next chord is or the next piece of harmony is, then your ear can start to then kind of facilitate some structure that sounds like you're going towards it. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Because again, that's one of the things with guitar players when they learn to play through changes, is that they sometimes sound like they're just cutting and pasting blocks of information. And the thing is that there's an element of that in the way that I'm suggesting to practice this, but it's more about what you're trying to do initially is just establish a foothold of where the information is. The improvisation element of it is about connecting it together, and that's a different conversation and a slightly different method. But doing this is more about clearing the, like almost kind of, clearing the, clear the decks, get it all organized, and then feel confident about where you're at, and actually then be able to hear the harmony in your head. And then you're on a good foot to then improvise.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at it as being like, oh, let's scale over this and this scale over that and that scale over that, it goes back to that. Oh, great, show me. Because again, with scales, a lot of the time, people can play you scales, but they can't just hit one note and evoke that, two notes or whatever. They can't just breathe that sound. There's loads of videos of Joe Satriani talking about that, where he'll play the Lydian mode and he'll go, no one will pay you for that. And then he'll hit like open string and then hit the sharp 11 and and do the whammy bar. And again, all of a sudden it's music because he knows what to play.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really essential. But the precursor to that is having a muscle memory in there that is strong enough to, when you start pushing harmonic information onto it, it doesn't go, oh, hang on, this is too overwhelming, too many shapes, don't know what I'm doing. It's more about having something really robust and actually so small and self-contained that you can zero in on it. So,
Yes.
so like when I was playing that Lydian thing, doesn't matter anywhere really. I'm not worried about what's up here if my hand's there. I'm only really thinking about that. And if I want to play outside of that, then it doesn't matter because my hands know the shapes. You know, so as I'm moving around, I still know the shape. So although I'm thinking mainly about G to G, if it's G major 7, experience tells me that that's what some people would think of as the Mixolydian box. I know that. My hand knows that. It's just that harmonically, I want to bring the blinkers in a bit to be more controlled.
Yeah.
That's peripheral vision, that stuff. I know it's there. When you're driving, you don't need to look at everything. You're kind of looking at this, but you're still aware of things. And I think it's about not feeling that you need to have 360 view all the time.
Music passes by so quickly that you're not going to need to cover, 16 fret positions.
Exactly, yeah. But weirdly, people practice as though that is what you're doing. Or they practice in a very non-musical way. The main practice is just playing scale. You know what I mean? Just that's it. Just.
But that's the thing, isn't it?
Practicing patterns.
There's the mechanical and the music, and somewhere you meet in the middle, I guess. That's hopefully.
Well, but again, with mechanics for me, and technical thing, I spent an awful lot of time on technique when I was younger, especially, and played loads of exercise. I was quite into the exercise thing for a while, but the thing is, it doesn't make your music any good. And what I realized was that just knowing diatonic patterns up the neck like that, stuff like that, is not context. Because
Guilty.
Right? Yeah, me too. But the thing is, that was a later revelation, really. And it was based more around the fact that when you pull real big name players apart, you kind of go, oh, actually, they only do this. Or why does Slash, when Slash just wants to burn, it still sounds musical. Yeah. Why is that? Yeah. He doesn't sound like he's sat gone, da 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 da. And I mean, you've probably done this more than me, actually. I know you've interviewed quite a lot of these guys for Total Guitar and that over the years. But if you have a chance to speak to them, I don't know any of them that I've ever met that will say to you, what I did was sat down with a metronome, just played a load of exercises, and that was really good. Yeah. They all pretty much just played music. Yeah. Like Paul Gilbert said to me that all the stuff I've done, if I should say this openly, but he was saying to me about how the early forms of instructional stuff that he put out, like the Intense Rock and all that, he said to me the material comes from trying to play Yngwie and Van Halen songs. He said, obviously, you can't go on a copyrighted video and go, okay, I was trying to play, I'm a Viking, and this is the pattern. You know what I mean? Yeah. And what he was sort of saying was, it's the classical music tradition of creating exercises. It's like the music you want to play. Where are the problems? That's a problem. Let me pull it out, turn it into something, and then slot it back in. But what happens now is people don't get the exercises from the music. They just get the exercise dispensed to them as though that's going to make the music. Yeah. And that's not how it works.
Yeah, it's a different mindset, isn't it? I mean, I guess these guitar players are working maybe because they're working in the industry. They've got the right mindset, if you like, to be able to think like that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that is the thing that the more... Honestly, what I see happening with all of my guys is the more you can get them to think as a musician and to just understand, like, again, what I would refer to as like the grammar of how things are played, the better. Like, it's funny because I saw a young guitar player put something up on Instagram a few weeks ago. And I know this person, and they're not someone that I teach, but I know them, and they put up some takes for something that they were doing for a project, and I had about 6 of my clients all send it to me going, "This is exactly what you told us not to do." and it was nothing to do with how good this person was playing. The playing was good, it was very technical, but the grammar of it made no sense. And it was just funny how all of these people suddenly now have this awareness of, I know what not to do. And I think knowing what not to do sometimes is as important as knowing what to do. And again, none of them were pulling this person apart. There was nothing like that. It was just an observation based around the fact that everything that's played sounds like it's cut and paste into bars, and it's disconnected, and it doesn't sound cohesive overall.
Yeah.
And all of my guys understand why that is, and why they can't, and why that didn't sound particularly good. And they would now not do that as a result of, and these are things that have got nothing to do with knowing 50 licks. It's just knowing how music works, and the thing is, you and I come from a point in time where you probably put a CD on or a tape and just try to work things out, and I think now, people, like some people will transcribe and that, they'll pull an MP3 onto a app and, but there's something in just spending an awful lot of time not quite knowing how something works and trying to figure it out yourself, that teaches you the language, like the real language, not the academic language. I mean, that's another thing with music theory. It should be called music theory in principle. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not hard and fast rules, It's kind of, all music theory, it's there as guidelines, and it's there as a kind of a way of, essentially presenting options when you get stuck, is what I think. What can happen here? I could use theory to figure out some ways out of this situation.
I mean, that might be the initial planning stage. Like if you've got a chord progression, go, okay, this is what I could use here, but
exactly,
maybe wouldn't be thinking that in the moment necessarily.
No, not necessarily. No, and again, under pressure, most musicians just use their ears. I mean, how many times have you had it where someone will go, "Oh, what was that lick you just played?" And you'll go, "I don't know," because you're not playing something.
Oh, this is lick 432.
Exactly.
No, it's not.
Yeah. I always liken it to kind of, if you go into like a Chinese restaurant and everything's just numbered, do you know what I mean? It's just like pulling numbers off the menu. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And some people do think like that, but I must admit, I don't know any really great players that think like that, and I've certainly never met any. And I know that none of the Premier League guitar players think like that, And again, to clarify that, Premier League players are your household names, not, they've got 200,000 followers on Instagram.
You're talking about gigging players.
Yeah, I'm talking about actually working musicians, people that actually, like innovators, people that have, molded the shape of, things, like real, like well-known established guys.
Yeah.
But, most of them just switch their ear on and go. But that comes through experience.
I mean, would you recommend transcribing? Because I always try and get students to do it like that. Not like
do
transcribing note for note, but like if you want to work something out, don't look at the tone. Like,
but again,
it will be wrong anyway.
It will be. Yeah. Well, the thing is, right? The transcribing again has become it's a little bit like the cage system. It's become slightly misunderstood. Yeah. So I think some people look at that and go, "Oh, transcribe it," and they think of it as very literal. Right, I'll get the manuscript out and I'll write it down, but my notation writing sucks. Transcribing literally means just work it out by ear, really. You don't need to write it. And also, if you want to learn something, you don't need to transcribe the whole thing. I remember hearing a John Schofield clinic, and someone said to him about, oh, do you transcribe? And he said, I transcribe licks that I want to learn. Like I'll transcribe something, like a little chunk. I won't transcribe the whole solo.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they kind of get stuck at the gate, and then they don't. It's like, yeah, but just cherry pick, and if you cherry pick those things, then the idea is you need to put that into practice. So if you, transcribe like a lick, then you need to be able to, you need to understand how that gets bookended into music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if someone transcribed, let me think of a lick. Say transcribe a blues lick, something like that. And they just do that. Doing triplets. Something like that. So when you go and play blues solo, that's come out of nowhere. That's like someone's just dropped it out of the sky. So it needs bookending in. And again, that's where the idea of kind of grammar, 1, 2, 3. See what I mean? It needs a way into that and a way out of it somehow. Yeah. It can't just kind of go bluff. And I think what some people do is they transcribe a lick, and then again they get, and then they just. And then again, it's like, oh, okay, that'll be ready for Saturday night when I play, when I play Mustang Saturday or whatever, It's,
when the feel's all completely wrong, it's like, oh, it suddenly doesn't work. That's it.
Yeah. So there's issues there with the time feel. There's issues with, okay, but where's that going to go? Yeah. How long is it? Yeah. Well, like again, that's something a lot of people don't consider is kind of like things like phrase lengths and stuff like that. If you listen to all the guitar players that you love, like anyone's into, they all have a set in stone phrase length that they pretty much always stick to. Like Eddie, like Van Halen, everything is 2 bars. Everything on every album ever, anytime he noodles, everything is 2 bars long. Every idea is 2 bars long. The only time it's not 2 bars long is in those double time Hot for Teacher, I'm the One shuffles. Yeah. And they're 4 bars long, but they're 4 bars long because he's feeling it in half time. Yeah. So it's still 2 bars. They're just 2 long bars for him. See what I mean? And again, that comes down to the grammar thing. Yeah. But again, if you take a maybe sometimes a younger player or student level player, when they play, they're all over the place. Do you know what I mean? And again, the idea of it being like, yeah, but if it's that structured, you're going to notice. No, because you haven't noticed yet. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not that there has to be structure and there has to be form for things to work. Yeah. The same as, if you wrote, if you wrote something down, if you've just got really odd lengths of short and long sentences and no paragraphs and that, it would be terrible. Yeah.
And it's back to intention as well, if there's not a sense of purpose, like where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, again, that goes back to being really clear about the harmony that you're trying to push across. Like being able to actually, convey the harmony. I mean, in my opinion, you should, if you want to play, if you want to really play for a living, if you want to sound like a guitar player, like a real guitar player, you should be able to basically, someone should just turn the backing track off and you should just still be able to keep the chords. Yeah. And even in situations where maybe there's just a riff or something like that, you need to be able to play in such a way that you're making someone hear some harmonic shift at the right point and then come back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It shouldn't sound like you're just blanket carpet bombing A minor scales over things, because that just, no one plays like that. No one in the real world plays like that. And that's not just, you know, guys like Steve Vai or whatever. Like people like Slash don't play like that. If you analyze his solos, they follow the chord changes.
Even a basic blues. I mean, if you listen to like, you know, Josh Smith, Robin Ford, you can hear the harmony throughout, but no matter what.
Well, the thing is about blues, and something that I always kind of found quite interesting, is that thing where people say about like blues playing, about it's really essential that you work on blues and you study blues. And I think a lot of people think that that's something to do with feel and vibrato and all this stuff. But actually, even if you took all that away, playing blues stuff teaches you to play to form. Because you've got 12-bar blues, and essentially it's, for all intents and purposes, 4 of the same chord going to something different.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 bars of that chord, back to 2 bars of that chord. And then it's coming back round again. So really, a 12-bar blues could be 6 2-bar ideas. You listen to a good player, that's probably what they're doing.
Yeah.
Or they might play 3 4-bar ideas that are elongated. And that's their grammar. That's their way of being grammatically correct. So there's more to it than always just the note choice and stuff like that. There's the form and the structure and the shape of the tune or the harmony as well. There's a lot to chew on with it. I mean, we could talk about this all day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and Tom, we're not even talked about timing either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the actual technique. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, rhythm and timing. You know, good rhythm, clear rhythm as well.
Yeah.
You know, that's another thing is with younger players too, is that they're not explicit about the rhythm that they're playing. They float over the bar lines. They float over the metronome. And again, that's something that's just guaranteed to make people just go, and shut down.
Yeah, even, you know, non-guitar players, non-musicians will be able to do it, right? Especially, the being clear and concise with your rhythm is so important, man. It's crazy. Yeah.
So important.
Well, listen, listen, we could talk for hours, but this is already going on very long.
For sure.
Jim Clark, thank you very much for having a chat today. Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, man. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. I know we've been chatting for a while, but yeah.
Yeah, listen, I'll put some links to the book and obviously your coaching business.
Just Instagram's really the place to sort of find me, really. I've been lazy. I've had so much organic traffic through Instagram. Instagram seems to, because that's where everyone lives in that world now. Yeah. I kind of haven't got around to putting a website together, but it's just Jim Clark Guitar on Instagram, you know. Yeah. And again, you know, I'm always happy to you know, chat to people or answer questions or anything. You know what I mean? If anyone watches this and goes, oh yeah, but what about, you know, whatever, then hit me up, ask me.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat today.
Mate.